It is wonderful to be able to address you through this video. Sorry I couldn't be here in person. At your Youngpurchasing professionals type of environment, because I'm from that environment myself. My father was head of purchasing of the banker for a long time. So I know the field and the trades from my upbringing. But one thing is for sure, the essence of purchasing is loaded with dilemmas. And what I will try to do today in a short video is to show you that our paradigms in how to approach dilemmas, especially through leaders like yourself, are bankrupt if we just follow the traditional MBA stuff. So what is this new paradigm of leadership that we need to deal more effectively with diversity? And it's amazing because the essence of leadership is creating wealth. And we have often talked about adding value. I have good news for you, you cannot add value because values are not addable. For example, if you take a safe car, it's easy to make. To make a speedy car, easy to make. But if you want to make a safe car speedy or a speedy car safe, that's difficult. The essence of leadership is how to combine values that are not easily joined, therefore scarce, therefore profitable. And we think the new paradigm of leadership is called servant leadership. And a servant leader only has one thing in his or her mind. How can I enable other people to perform better? And the meta dilemma here, the different values that are not easily joined, is to be a servant and a leader at the same time. So don't confuse it with a servant dash leader. Let's take a final example, and that is the example of sustainability. It is amazing how we have jumped on the last fashion in management thinking. Everything should be done now for society. I think it's as nonsensical as what we did 100 years ago with scientific management. Obviously, in those times, it was very natural to talk about we have to increase efficiency. And there were time and motion studies by Frederick Taylor, Henri Fayol. But it killed itself by exaggeration. And the exaggeration was born out of an experiment called the Hawthorne experiment, when they increased light on one side and kept it stable on the other side. This was in the 30s. And what they found out in the group where they increased the intensity of light with the assembly of telephones, productivity went up. In the group where light was taken stable productivity. They say, hey, another great factor that we can introduce to increase productivity, intensity of light. Then a smart engineer said, you know what we do? We decrease the intensity of light. And what happened? Productivity still went up. Now that's interesting. So a whole new school was born, and that was called the Human Relations School. And the Human Relations School focused on employee development and learning. But it killed itself by the same exaggeration as scientific management in the beginning. Because they said this is all internal. We need the external side, namely we need to satisfy the client. And you remember in the 60s, early 70s, marketing and sales became very popular. Client is king, etc. And it killed itself by the next exaggeration. You remember shareholder value? I remember very well that I was once invited by the Financial Times to write an article, a column in the Financial Times called Shareholder Value, the value created for people who never share. And I predicted it would kill itself for the same reason. If you take a value to its extreme at the cost of other values, it will kill itself. Shall I predict the next bankruptcy? The next pathology? Corporate social responsibility. Why? Because if CO2 emissions are your problem, why don't you stop your manufacturing? Why don't you stop driving a car? And people will say, oh, wait a second, but what about our employees? What about our shareholders? And that's the point I want to make. That the sustainability of an organization, which is the ultimate responsibility for a leader, is to reconcile the 10 tensions between the share and the stakeholders. In other words, we have chased the unicorn. We have chased one value at the cost of another value. And that's not sustainable, including just going for society. The essence of leadership is to create sustainability. And sustainability can be only reached when you deal with the dilemmas between the stakeholders. And we have called this the 10 golden dilemmas. Let me give you some examples. If we look at corporate efficiency versus employee development and learning, we find the dilemma, on the one hand we need to develop our people versus to become more cost conscious. And we see many of those. Equal opportunities versus positive discrimination. Short-term cash flow versus long-term sustainability. Satisfy our customers at all costs versus shareholder value. Global versus local. And it's the role of the leader to reconcile those dilemmas. Let me then show what servant leadership does. Servant leadership tries to integrate those opposites. And they do it in a particular way. And let me show you a first example. Global versus local. And this is a dilemma that obviously is created between the need for efficiency, effectiveness, economies of scale, and that is a call for globalization. On the other hand, we want to be flexible, close to the client, close to the customer, and that's a call for local. That creates a dilemma, where the old paradigm said you have to make a choice. If you don't make a choice, you don't know if you're global or local. What we need to do is crack the line into a dual axis. If we exaggerate global and centralized approaches, we get the famous global organization where the rest of the world is called ROW. The global corporation are corporations where headquarters dictates everything. It's a bit a half lame duck. If we take the other extreme, we find the decentral multinational. It's the multi-local type of organization. The multi-local type of organization is an organization where we deal with local opportunities in a very pragmatic way, but the only thing that binds us is, for example, a brand or a financial link. Very, very attractive is what we call the compromise. The compromise is position 5-5, and that in this case is the wonderful idea of the international corporation. That's an organization that looks like a Statue of Liberty with a local flag. Walt Disney parks are a good example, where you drink wine in Paris and perhaps only Coca-Cola in Florida. What is the reconciliation? The reconciliation is what we call the wonderful transcultural corporation. 3 characteristics. It learns locally and then takes the best practices which are globalized. It has a top which is diverse, and in the very, very core of it, it's a value-driven organization. And the value-driven organization is an organization that has sophisticated values. It doesn't go for teamwork. No, it will say we strive for teams that consist of creative individuals. It says things like we believe in straight feedback with diplomacy. And especially in the Netherlands, that's quite a challenge.